A volunteer firefighter in Hart County, Kentucky, told a local reporter this week that it had been at least 40 years since that part of the state had seen storm damage like this. 40 years. Think about that for a second. That's not a guy being dramatic for a camera. That's somebody who has spent decades responding to storms in his own community, looking at what's left of it, and not recognizing the place. 2 days ago, a line of severe thunderstorms tore across Kentucky and Ohio and left a trail of destruction that stretched from small farm towns you've probably never heard of all the way into the suburbs of Louisville, and then kept going, spinning up tornadoes as far away as northern New Jersey before the night was over. Homes ripped off their foundations, barns reduced to twisted metal. At the peak, more than 100,000 people across 3 states sitting in the dark. And as of right now, survey crews are still out in the field, walking damage paths, trying to figure out exactly how many tornadoes touched down and how strong they actually were. I need you to sit with me for the next few minutes and go through this properly, because this wasn't one tornado in one town. This was a multi-state outbreak from a single storm system, and if you're anywhere in the Ohio Valley or the Mid-Atlantic, understanding how this event unfolded matters, because the same kind of setup can happen again this summer, and I want you to recognize it before it's on top of you next time, not after. Let's rebuild the timeline, because it matters. On Tuesday, July 21st, a significant severe weather event developed and swept across Kentucky during the afternoon and evening, then continued spreading north and east into Ohio, West Virginia, and eventually the Northeast, including northern New Jersey, before the system finally wound down. This wasn't an isolated pop-up storm. This was a broad, severe weather outbreak, the kind where dozens of communities across multiple states are dealing with damage from the same parent system on the same night. In Kentucky, the damage has been some of the most severe. The National Weather Service office in Louisville confirmed a large among an extremely dangerous radar-confirmed tornado that touched down Tuesday evening in and around Munfordville in Hart County. People in the nearby community of Rawlitz described torrential rain and what they called ferocious, straight-line winds moving through ahead of and alongside the tornado. That tornado left behind significant structural damage and widespread power outages in Hart County, and it's one of several that survey teams have now confirmed across the state. Kentucky has also confirmed at least 6 EF1 tornadoes as of the most recent survey updates, touching down across Anderson, Bourbon, Boyd, Jessamine, Jefferson, and Nelson counties, with wind speeds in some of those tornadoes reaching as high as 110 miles per hour in Jessamine County alone. In Fairdale, in Jefferson County, that's in the Louisville metro area, meteorologists confirmed at least EF1 damage with estimated winds up to 90 miles per hour, which tells you this outbreak wasn't confined to rural areas. It reached directly into a major population center. A brief EF0 tornado was also confirmed in Grayson County, with peak winds estimated around 85 miles per hour. And that same area saw damage serious enough to leave multiple people injured. And then there's Owen County, which might be the community that's taken this the hardest. Residents there reported seeing a large tornado carrying visible debris move through Tuesday afternoon, particularly near the town of Sparta. Video captured by residents showed a tornado tearing through the county, ripping homes and barns clean off their foundations and leaving mangled metal scattered across fields. The damage was serious enough that Owen County's judge executive issued a local state of emergency because of the sheer number of homes and buildings destroyed and the condition the area was left in. County officials have set up a direct line for residents whose homes were damaged to call in and get connected with help. When your county government is standing up an emergency declaration and a dedicated damage reporting hotline within 24 hours of a storm, that tells you everything you need to know about the scale of what hit that community. Survey teams from the National Weather Service office in Wilmington, Ohio, are working through Gallatin, Owen, and Grant counties right now, walking the ground, mapping debris patterns, and using the enhanced Fujita scale to assign official ratings to every confirmed tornado. That process takes time. It's not something you can do from a helicopter in an afternoon. Surveyors are looking at how trees fell, how debris was scattered, how structures failed, and using all of that physical evidence to reconstruct exactly how strong the winds were at ground level, because a tornado's rating isn't a guess, it's a forensic reconstruction after the fact. Meanwhile, the same storm system that hit Kentucky kept moving. In Claremont County, Ohio, a tornado touched down and heavily damaged at least one home directly. A resident there described bringing her grandchildren down to the basement the moment she heard the tornado warning go out, and said the winds picked up, the lights started flickering, and then she heard what she described as a loud bang. A tree coming down directly onto the house. That's about as close to a worst-case split-second scenario as you can get, and it's exactly why a tornado warning means act immediately, not keep an eye on it. The system didn't stop at the Ohio Valley either. As the same line of supercell thunderstorms pushed east, 2 more tornadoes were confirmed in northern New Jersey. And in West Virginia, a separate but related disaster unfolded. Historic flooding tied to the same storm system has now been confirmed responsible for at least 2 deaths, and countless personal belongings have been damaged or destroyed, and the full extent of the losses is still unknown. So this is the part I really want you to understand. This was never just a Kentucky tornado story or an Ohio tornado story. This was one parent storm system that produced a tornado outbreak in the Ohio Valley, catastrophic flash flooding in West Virginia, and additional tornadoes in the Northeast, all within about 24 hours. When people ask why meteorologists get so locked in on a single storm system days in advance, this is why. One system, this much geographic reach, this many different kinds of damage. Let's actually talk about the mechanics here, because I don't want to just list damage reports at you. I want you to understand why a summer storm system was able to produce this many tornadoes across this much territory. Severe weather outbreaks like this one need a few ingredients to line up at the same time. And in mid to late July, that combination is actually a little less common than it is in spring, which is part of why this event surprised some people. You need strong instability. That's energy in the atmosphere, usually from a hot, humid air mass sitting at the surface with cooler, drier air aloft, creating a setup where air that gets a push upward keeps accelerating on its own, like a hot air balloon that just won't stop rising. You need wind shear, meaning the wind direction and speed change with height, because that's what takes a straight up and down thunderstorm and tilts it, organizing it into a rotating supercell instead of just a blob of rain and lightning. And you need a trigger, usually a front or a disturbance moving through, to actually kick that rising air into motion in the first place. On Tuesday, all 3 of those ingredients came together across Kentucky and Ohio. The atmosphere had built up plenty of instability with the summer heat and humidity sitting over the region, and enough wind shear was present aloft to organize thunderstorms into rotating supercells rather than just a disorganized line of storms. When a supercell has that rotation built into its structure, meteorologists call that a mesocyclone, it's capable of tightening that rotation down toward the ground and producing a tornado. That's exactly what happened repeatedly across multiple counties on the same evening, which is why you don't just get one tornado report. You get a whole outbreak strung out across the state as multiple storm cells, all riding the same atmospheric setup, each get their own turn at producing a tornado as they track across the landscape. Here's a detail that matters for how you personally respond to these events. Notice how many of these tornadoes were radar confirmed before or without a visual confirmation, especially the large and extremely dangerous tornado near Munfordville. In a lot of these events, especially ones happening in the evening or in areas with hills, trees, and limited visibility, meteorologists are watching a very specific radar signature, a tight rotational couplet, essentially the radar seeing wind moving toward it, right next to wind moving away from it in a very small area. And that signature can indicate a tornado on the ground even before anyone calls in and confirms they can see it. That's why a tornado warning gets issued off radar data alone sometimes. And it's why you should never wait for a visual confirmation, a siren, or a news alert before you take a warning seriously. If your phone buzzes with a tornado warning for your county, the radar has already seen something rotating strongly enough to warrant it. Don't wait to see it with your own eyes. By the time you can see a tornado clearly, especially at night or through rain-wrapped conditions like a lot of these storms had, you may not have enough time left to get to safety. Let's talk about the power outages for a second, because the numbers here actually tell a really useful story about how this event evolved. At the peak of the storm Tuesday night, more than 100,000 customers across Kentucky, Ohio, and New Jersey had lost power. That's not people, that's customers, meaning individual accounts, so the actual number of people affected. Counting entire households and businesses behind each account was almost certainly well over that figure. By Wednesday midday, crews had made real progress, and outages had dropped to fewer than 21,000 across those same states, which is a genuinely fast turnaround for a multi-state event and reflects how quickly utility companies were able to mobilize repair crews once daylight came and road access improved. But raw statewide numbers can hide where the real pain is concentrated. In Kentucky specifically, on Tuesday evening alone, nearly 15,000 customers were without power, with Hart County, the county that took the Munfordville tornado, reporting the highest concentration in the western part of the state, at over 300 customers in the dark. The power outages after a tornado outbreak aren't just an inconvenience, they're a secondary hazard multiplier. Downed power lines are frequently still energized even after a storm passes, and in a lot of these Kentucky counties, roads were closed specifically because of fallen trees tangled up with downed power lines, which is an extremely dangerous combination for When you lose power in the middle of summer, you lose air conditioning, and in a region that's also been dealing with dangerously high heat index values, an extended outage stops being just an inconvenience and starts becoming a genuine health risk, especially for elderly residents. When you hear the National Weather Service is surveying storm damage, that's not a formality. Assigning an accurate rating to a tornado using the enhanced Fujita scale is genuinely important scientific and public safety work, and it takes real time to do properly. Survey teams walk the actual damage path on the ground, examining how structures failed. Did a roof simply lose shingles? Or did entire exterior walls collapse inward? Or did a well-built home get swept completely off its foundation? Because different failure modes correspond to different wind speed thresholds on the EF scale. They look at how trees fell, whether they were snapped, uprooted, or debarked, which tells them about wind speed and whether the wind was rotating or moving in a straight line. They cross-reference resident accounts, video footage like the clips coming out of Owen County, and radar data to piece together not just how strong a tornado was, but how long its path was on the ground and how wide. This matters beyond just satisfying curiosity about the numbers. Official EF ratings feed directly into how emergency management agencies allocate disaster relief resources, how insurance claims get processed for policyholders in the affected areas, and how future building codes and public tornado safety guidance get shaped in that specific region. It's also how climatologists build the long-term historical record that lets meteorologists identify patterns, like whether summer tornado outbreaks in the Ohio Valley are becoming more frequent or more intense over time. As of right now, survey work is still actively underway in Gallatin, Owen, and Grant counties in Kentucky, meaning the 6 confirmed EF1 tornadoes, and the Munfordville tornado we've talked about tonight may not be the final count. It would not be surprising to see additional confirmed tornadoes and potentially higher ratings than initially estimated come out of this survey process over the next several days as crews finish walking the damage paths in Owen County specifically, given how significant the on-the-ground damage there has been described as. So where do things stand right now, 2 days out? And what should people in the affected areas actually be watching for? In Owen County, the local state of emergency remains in effect, and county officials are actively working through damage assessments while asking residents with damaged homes to call in directly so resources can be prioritized correctly. If you know anyone in that community, sharing that contact information matters more right now than sharing storm footage. In Hart County, cleanup and power restoration continue around Munfordville and Rowlitz, and with a tornado described as large and extremely dangerous. Having tracked through that area, residents should continue to expect road closures in the immediate vicinity as crews clear debris and repair infrastructure. Across the broader Louisville metro, including Fairdale and Jefferson County, and up into central Kentucky around Lexington and Fayette County, the bulk of the power. Restoration work appears largely complete based on the most recent outage numbers, but debris cleanup, downed trees, damaged roofing, fencing, outbuildings is going to continue for days in a lot of these neighborhoods, and that's worth keeping in mind if you're driving through any of these areas. Expect crews working roadside, expect temporary lane closures, and give them room to work. And I don't want to lose sight of West Virginia in all of this, because that flooding disaster came out of the exact same parent storm system, and it's arguably the most severe outcome of the whole event. With confirmed fatalities and ongoing search and rescue operations in Lewis County, and a hospital in Weston having to run on generator power because of the outages there, that recovery is going to take considerably longer than the tornado cleanup happening in Kentucky and Ohio. If you're the praying type or the donating type, that's a community that's going to need sustained attention long after the storm has stopped being a headline. Going forward, I want everyone in the Ohio Valley and Mid-Atlantic thinking about this event as a preview of the kind of setup that's absolutely possible again before summer's over. Hot, humid air mass at the surface, sufficient wind to shear aloft, and a triggering disturbance. That combination doesn't require a special, rare weather pattern. It can come together with only a few days of lid time, sometimes less. So here's the actual action item, not just information. If you don't already have a way to receive tornado warnings that doesn't depend on you actively checking an app, a NOAA weather radio, wireless emergency alerts enabled on your phone, a trusted local news app with push notifications, set that up today, not after the next warning is already out. And if your home doesn't have an obvious safe space, an interior room on the lowest floor, away from windows, figure that out now, while it's calm, not while a warning's already been issued and you're trying to make that decision in 60 seconds with your family scattered across the house. I want to zoom out for a minute because I think it's worth asking, Is this normal for July, or is this something more unusual? Tornado outbreaks absolutely can and do happen in the summer months, but the Ohio Valley's most notorious outbreaks tend to cluster in spring, when the temperature contrast between air masses is typically sharper and wind shear tends to be stronger. By midsummer, the jet stream usually retreats north, and shear values across Kentucky and Ohio are often too weak to organize storms into the kind of rotating supercells capable of producing multiple confirmed tornadoes across several counties in one evening. That's part of why this event is drawing so much attention from meteorologists. It's not that summer tornado outbreaks in this region are unheard of. It's that getting 6 or more confirmed tornadoes, including one described as large and extremely dangerous, out of a single July storm system takes a specific and less common alignment of atmospheric ingredients. It's also worth remembering that this region has a difficult recent history with exactly this kind of event. Kentucky in particular has been through devastating tornado outbreaks in the past, including nocturnal, long-track tornadoes that caused mass casualties. That history is part of why local officials and emergency managers in this state tend to move fast and mobilize hard the moment a serious outbreak is confirmed. You saw that with Owen County's emergency declaration coming within roughly a day of the storm. Communities here have unfortunately had to learn, more than once, how quickly a summer evening storm can turn catastrophic, and that institutional memory is showing up in how fast the response has moved this week. None of this means you should expect an outbreak like this every July. Most summers in the Ohio Valley pass with, at most, isolated severe thunderstorm warnings, and maybe a brief, weak tornado here or there. But it does mean the ingredients for a significant outbreak can come together in this region outside the traditional spring severe weather season. And that's exactly the kind of pattern shift worth staying alert to as we move through the rest of hurricane season and into the back half of summer, when Gulf moisture, cold fronts, and instability can interact in ways that catch a lot of people off guard, specifically because they weren't expecting severe weather that time of year. Before I close this out, I want to get specific about safety, because a lot of the danger from an event like this doesn't end when the storm does. If you're in any of the counties we've talked about tonight and you're dealing with storm debris on your property, treat every downed line as energized. Wear real footwear, not sandals. And if you smell gas or hear hissing near a damaged structure, leave the area immediately and call it in rather than investigating yourself. Chainsaw injuries during storm cleanup send a genuinely significant number of people to the emergency room every year, more than most people expect. So if you're not experienced with one, this is a good week to let a professional crew handle the larger limbs and trunks instead of doing it yourself. If your home took structural damage, document everything with photos and video before you move or discard anything for insurance purposes. And reach out to your county's damage reporting line, like the one Owen County has set up, even if you think the damage is minor. Those reports are how local and state officials build the case for state or federal disaster assistance, and undercounted damage can mean a community qualifies for less help than it actually needs. And for everyone in the broader region, not just the directly hit counties, this is a good week to actually check your own severe weather plan rather than assuming it's fine. Confirm your NOAA weather radio has working batteries. Confirm wireless emergency alerts are turned on in your phone's settings, not just assumed to be on. Walk through, out loud with your family, exactly where you'd go in your specific home if a tornado warning was issued for your address in the next 10 minutes. That exercise takes less than 2 minutes, and it is consistently the difference between a calm, fast response and a chaotic, dangerous scramble when a real warning hits. Here's what I want you to walk away with tonight. This wasn't a freak, isolated event. It was a textbook severe weather outbreak that happened to line up instability, shear, and a trigger across a huge swath of the country in a single afternoon and evening. And it produced real, life-altering damage in specific communities. Owen County, Hart County, Fairdale, Claremont County, and now Lewis County, West Virginia, dealing with an entirely separate flooding catastrophe tied to the same system. If you're in any of these communities and you're still cleaning up, still without power, still waiting on a survey crew or an insurance adjuster, I see you, and I hope the resources get to you fast. If you're watching this from somewhere that didn't get hit this time, take this as your reminder to actually build your severe weather plan now while it's calm, because the same setup that hit Kentucky and Ohio on Tuesday can absolutely reload somewhere else with very little warning. I'm going to keep watching the survey updates coming out of Owen, Gallatin, and Grant counties over the next few days, because I think the final tornado count and ratings from this outbreak are going to end up higher than what's been confirmed so far. I'll also be keeping an eye on the recovery situation in West Virginia, because that's the part of this story that's far from over. As soon as there's a meaningful update, I'll bring it to you. Until then, take care of your neighbors, and I'll see you in the next one.